What's going on, everybody? It is Webster Style here, the man, the voice, the fragrance, here with my brother Christopher Crossley. Oh man, Chris, it's weird because
Yo,
I really met you when I started this just about way back in 2009. So it's great to have you on talk with you since we've been literally corresponding for over a decade now.
over
It's really
exactly.
amazing.
I mean, I
Uh,
think was it on Tumblr back in those
uh
days?
it might have been Tumblr
Yeah,
or might have been through WordPress. I think I found you through
yeah,
somebody else
yeah. One of
who
those
used to
two.
have a blog that's not active anymore. But yeah, it's internet
It's been
is
a
a crazy,
while.
funny thing. Yeah, it's been a long time,
It's been
man.
a while.
But one of the things I've always loved about you, you are there are many men on the web, but especially back then, one of the reasons why I started Webster Style was that I didn't see a lot of us in things like GQ, details, things of that nature back then, and anything that really highlighted style when it came to men of color, particularly black men, but men of color in general, really was just like King Magazine, all those things that were more of street urban style. And
True.
that was never me. And I really saw the platform to really personify that aspect of myself within brothers that are like me, and that led me to contacting, interacting, and network with other brothers like yourself. So I've always admired you and what you've been doing and your style. So I wanted to ask you this, and this is something I've always found. Well, first of all, introduce yourself to the audience. Let's just get into it.
It's all good. It's a pleasure, man. It's indeed a pleasure. Like I said, we've been chopping it up for so many years.
Right.
So I felt really good when you asked me to come on and talk with you and the people. It felt good. So most people know me here as a gentleman coach in Trinidad and Tobago. I actually work with men of substance. I help them refine themselves and help them understand how to show up more in their professional and social circles. Some people call me the luxury curator because I actually also had a career, or have a career, I should say, in the luxury industry as well. So you'll find I'm a kind of a, what do you call it, a multi-potentialite, where I like certain things, but they all tend to gel together. Because for me, once you're a man of taste and of substance and you're authentic, then you would actually like items of a certain caliber as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Understood. So now let me ask you this question, and this is something I find amazing. It's particularly because how my own style journey has gone over the past few years, particularly. Where does your style come from? Like, what have your influences been now and growing up?
Well, growing up and now it'll be like is like black and white, two different phases completely. Because I grew up a DJ, so you'll find a lot of my style back then was influenced by hip hop. So I was all into the baggy jeans, the triple XL t-shirts, the cargo pants with the big pockets, everything. I was the Tim's sneakers, I was doing that. But it's only when I moved into my professional career, when I finished school and I got into certain circles, and I realized that people like to do business with people that dress as well as or better than them. And I saw the way or the interactions and the responses I got from people on the days I dressed casually compared to the days that I dressed more formal or more business-like. And the people that would have influenced my style over the years is James Bond, one. And then if you look at guys like Hannibal Lecter, the gentleman, people tend to look at the psycho side of him, but there's also the gentleman side of him that dresses
Right.
very well. If you look at the last series with Matt Mickelson, his
Yes.
attire
Yes.
is immaculate, right? So you'll find that those guys more or less shaped my wardrobe. But in my wardrobe now, most of it is actually quite formal, quite standard. I stay with, the staple colors, the navies, the grays. I have the one or two pieces for events. But you'll find I tend to like that formal look. If you wanted to compare me to a character, a comic character, I would be Bruce Wayne because that was my nickname at that point in time too. And Bruce Wayne is the gentleman as well, even though he's a playboy and all that. He's always well dressed, So that those figures is where you will see I got a lot of my influences from.
Understood. Those are good influences to have, especially the Hannibal series. It's I haven't watched all of it, but I've gotten into some of it, and just Mads Mikkelsen's portrayal of that character. It's
Yes.
it's from a style perspective, it is a standout. But even from an acting perspective, to take a character that we're so synonymously put to Anthony Hopkins, and really to come in and redefine a character and make the character your own is really
Yes.
something special. And then the obviously the style aspect of it really
Ooh.
helped to cement him as Hannibal Lecter, at least of a certain era.
Correct. It did. And the things that he liked to do, the places he's like, I tell people, focus on the man that is well traveled, well dressed, well educated. Yes, he has that other side of him, but those three other characteristics, man, he took that and owned it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now you talk about fellas, and let's. I want to ask you about the fellas because I when I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I love that concept, and listening to the podcast and everything. I really enjoyed it. Tell me how
Right.
the fellas came about.
Right. So the fellas came about. The person that actually produced the show is a good friend of mine that I grew up with as well. And there was something that we saw, and I know it's universal. It's not just here alone where I live. Men have issues defining what masculinity is. It's very challenged now. A lot of things are emasculating. To navigate the world right now as a man seems a bit harder for most. And we wanted to find ways to help men open up and have the discussions about the challenges they're having, whether it's in their professional lives, relationship, finances, especially because we know no man is happy when his finances are not in order. So we looked at all the things that were affecting men and said, you know what, let's get a group of guys together that we know can speak on it, and they will. The person brought me in from the gentleman perspective. They called me Mr. Classy on the show. And then we had another guy, Dellison. He's actually a psychologist. He is trained in behavioral science. And then we had Gat, what we call Mr. G. He actually lives in LA, and he came from the perspective of he is a leadership coach. So we were able to take the different elements from each of our specialties and bring it together to form the fellas. And lo and behold, a lot of people they call us the PSG of talk shows.
I love that.
It's like, yo, this is not no simple conversation. This is straight, no chaser, no fluff, only filler, heavy, deep conversations. And it's usually conversations that people try to step over, but
Right.
is actually needed more today for men, especially.
And that's one of the things that I really liked about it. Now, we all know the internet YouTube spaces have really seen a proliferation of male-oriented content, particularly in the past, I would say really pandemic.
Yeah.
Really, there ended up being an explosion, and a lot of the more high-profile purveyors of that, I would say a lot of times, well, most of the times, I would say the conversations aren't as constructive as they think it is, because a lot of that conversation on manhood, masculinity really gets reduced down to tropes, in my opinion, as
Yeah.
well as very centered around interaction with women.
With women. Yeah.
And I think that, and this is, some people don't like this, but I say people tend to be very ignorant of someone's full body of work. This is one of the things where when you look at someone like a Kevin Samuels and you look at
Mm,
everything that he talked about, he touched upon a lot of, he was a bit harsher than a general conversation, but he was drastically different in a lot of things he said as far as manhood, masculinity.
mhm.
While he played on some of those tropes, there was a lot more in-depth conversation as well after you get past the women calling in and all those things that really blew him up. There was a lot
Yeah.
more substance to what he talked about as far as men's empowerment, men's growth. And I felt like with that whole bubble, that manosphere, that red pill stuff,
Yeah.
while some of it, some conversations are needed, it really just got distilled down into this, whether you perceive it this way or not, a sort of hyper masculine persona. And with that, that turned a lot of people off.
Yeah.
And you missed the real conversation. That was one of the things I liked about the fellas. It was real men having real conversations about what it is to be a man, because that is something that is, I'll say is, I'm 44 years old. I could not, and I'm still trying to figure out what that is, because we change and we grow
Correct.
every single day. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be a 22-year-old in this day and age,
Yo.
trying to figure that out in the world we live in, having these conversations or trying to have these conversations. So that's one of the things I really appreciated with the fellas and listening to those conversations, because they were realistic. They were real. They were honest and to the heart. And no one sugarcoat any of their positions.
No.
And nobody was capping, as they say,
No.
to get an audience. It was just pretty much a bunch of guys talking about real issues from their perspectives, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, thank you. And a lot of, funny enough, the majority of our viewers and listeners were women, right? That usually happens. But what we liked is that the women went and told all the men, yo, y'all need to listen to these guys, because this is the stuff that nobody wants to tackle. And
Right.
it needs to be said, because we always mention that we need to work with, it is easier to work with children and fix broken men. I think there's a quote somewhere that says that. But also for me is, if we leave certain things unattended, as much as we're trying to fix the younger generation, the examples come from the older guys. So we do need to address that as well. We can't leave them by themselves. So we have to address the men now that will be the examples, regardless of how we try to steer young men. They need examples, and that comes from the older generation.
It's interesting that you say that. Even in my personal life, just from the web and interacting, I've networked with a lot of younger brothers, and then we have became friends, acquaintances. But a lot of questions are asked, like, "Hey, what is this like? What is your perspective on this?" And it's interesting myself being in that sort of mentor older position, living my experiences and really say, hey, okay, this is how it was then, this is my perspective. And it's for me to be able to really share those things and to be honest, is refreshing, but also the gratitude as well, because many are like, just thank you for being honest, thank you for, because some things, when you're being honest about somebody, it's hard to reveal certain things about your life. It's hard to
Correct.
really reveal your perspectives and reveal your pain and trauma as well. And when you realize this will help someone, you do it. And just the fact that so many are just grateful, say, hey, thank you very much, your perspective, it really helped me out a lot. That that mentorship aspect of being an older brother, that does me a world of good, and it does them a world of good as well. So I totally understand that perspective.
And I think that's why it's so important that many of us tell our story. Let's be our authentic selves. And just in touching that, like usually the adage where somebody asks you how your day is going, you'll be like, yeah, fine, I'm good, no problem. But the truth is you're really struggling. But you don't ever mention that you're struggling or going through something. I think when people, especially men, when we don't tell our authentic truths, we miss out on actually getting the assistance we need, because we try to play off cool, we try to play that we're good. And the truth is, yo, I actually need help, but I don't know how to express that I need help. So even those examples and the things with like what we did on the fellas was to let guys know it's okay to ask for help. If you really need it, ask. It doesn't make sense you stay by yourself, wallowing and stressing and worrying, and you're close to imploding or exploding. We want to get past that.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part of it, but also the best part about hearing that from other men, because as I'm sure we, especially our generation, we're very much taught you don't need no help.
Don't
Men
need no
men don't need
help.
help. Men don't cry. Suck it up. Be
Suck it
tough.
up.
Don't be a
Yep.
sissy. All like we heard all of those things. So to get to a point where in our 30s, 40s,
40s. Yeah.
we've experienced trauma. We've experienced not just heartbreak, but
We've lived,
we
we
experienced so
experienced.
much. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we've literally had to hold that in for the benefit of everybody else. That does wear on you, and
It
it's
does.
good that we are at a point now we can say, hey, I need help. I need a shoulder to lean on. I mean, the song is called "Lean on Me" for a reason,
Correct.
and it
Correct.
wasn't just talking about the women.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And I
So
tell people, look at the examples sometimes of what women do. Women have their support system
yes,
together.
yes,
I admire that. And I'd be like, I see women put out the call for a meeting, a meetup, they're doing whatever, and women show up.
they do.
We do the same thing for men, and it's crickets. Unless it's an event that's interactive, probably sports based or something, to get men in the room together to talk has
Right.
been it's been hard. But I said, but look at women. Women have it together. They show up for each other. Yes, we might look at who might be envy and the jealousy and the little cat fight and all again. It don't matter. They still show up. Let them. They will show up the cat fight. They're still showing up.
Right.
Men, no.
Exactly.
You have to beg them to attend,
Yep.
unless unless it pertains back to how they could relate or interact with women. So as long as we have women at the event, men will show up. If it's an all men's thing, like we have to beg.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. I think, and it's funny you make that point, and one of the things that I tell people that I think was one of the best decisions in my life is that I ended up going to an all boys high school. That wasn't my first choice, but that was my mom wanted.
Right.
So I ended up going. Best decision of my life. It gave me a perspective on being without women and
Mm-hmm.
having women in the picture that I would never have understood if I had have gone to the high school I wanted to go to.
One to go to.
And it's so I think that that perspective has really informed me and given me a different viewpoint than I would have. So I say that to say I totally agree and understand with what you're saying because I've lived that life at some point in time without that constant female interaction. So I see the differences when women are there versus when they aren't, and how when we don't even realize we're doing it. We don't really realize we have that interaction because it's for most of us that's always present, or they are always present. Their
Mm-hmm.
influence is always present, or the motivation to be around them, near them, to whatever is always present. And we as men don't even realize that's how we're operating.
Operating.
And only when we are taken out of that situation do we even realize that. And I would have never realized that unless I was in that situation for 4 years. And that is really one of those things that is impacted my life in a very positive way. I'm very grateful to my mother for pushing me to do that because it was definitely something that made me more of a man and more into the man I am today than maybe other choices in my life.
Correct. Because you know why as well. The thing is now when you do have to interact with women, because I went to all boys school as well. And there were girls, but they were like in the top, what we would call sixth form. They
Hmm.
were the 16, 17-year-olds doing A levels. And when you come to speak with them, you have a different energy.
Yes.
The energy changes immediately. And even from that age, you realize that there's some finesse that comes into play. So it's always interesting to me to see the nuances when it comes to communication and how we interact with women, even from those days to now. And a lot of men still say, they don't know how to interact or engage or communicate with women. And I'm like, you're how old? You're not 16. And even at 16, I know you understood because you knew what you wanted then,
Yes.
So
That that conversation, well, I'll say this much. That's a whole lot of factors in that regard, especially with the younger generation, because they did not grow up like us as far as technology and communication is concerned. So that's a whole nother conversation unto itself, realistically.
the lack of the art of communication with those guys
Yes.
right now. So
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say.
Well, I would say honestly that it goes both ways in that regard. There
Yes, it
is
does.
such a lack of communication overall, not this lack of it, how to communicate and how
Okay,
to communicate effectively,
effectively.
because everything is so digital. And I see that in general with how, like, when I've talked to individuals. I'm talking to a gentleman from my old college a few weeks ago, last week.
All
Um,
right.
he put me on. Well, he was put on to me as someone who had some experience. So I was there, so I was talking to him, and just talking about his experiences and talking with him about communication, how to reach out to people. And I was just like, yeah, it's a bit different when I was there, as far as how you communicate, how you get people together. It's like we
Yeah,
didn't have certain technologies, so in that regard, I said it's a bit different
yeah.
than when I did it, because he thought he thought he's like, oh, so when you graduate, like 2010. I said, no,
Oh,
no, I was there. My freshman year was 96 to 2000.
96.
He's like, what? I was like, yeah. It's like, oh, what? Nope. It was, yeah, it's been a while. It's been a long while. So
Yeah,
yeah. So that communication thing, but like I said, that's a whole nother topic. But one of the
conversation.
ways that we communicate is through the written word. And
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, you have your free ebook, Connoisseur Notes. How did you come up with that idea to do that?
Right. So Connoisseur Notes actually started off as my way of journaling every day. I was getting into the
Mhm.
practice of journaling back then. And I realized a lot of the time I was speaking to myself. I always say journaling is when you get to experience yourself on paper. Because we will have the thoughts, and when we put it on paper and get to read it back to ourselves, sometimes we're like, wait a minute, did I write that? Or you realize where your thoughts are. So you get to experience yourself on paper. And I went through an entire series, an entire year, just writing these notes. And I said, you know what, I want to share this with men, share it online, share it on the platform. And I started doing that. And then when I got into doing, when I started Modern Connoisseur, and I was packaging everything, I was like, look, I actually have a little ebook here if I took all that I journaled so far and put it together. So that's how that came about. But it really started with me journaling and deciding, you know what, this is me experiencing myself and I want to share it.
Awesome. Yeah, well, obviously you put it out a while ago, and I read it, but
Yeah,
I was just thinking, where did the inspiration for that come from? And again, ladies and gentlemen, it's free, so
free. It's free.
make sure you download and read it. Is a good read, a very good read. Now we talking about being a gentleman, and one of the things, and my content,
Mm-hmm.
fragrances, man, fragrances.
Fragrance.
Like what's your signature scent?
Oh man. All right. Well, it has changed. I'll give you that. For a while, I used to go to Jean Paul Gaultier Le Mille.
Mhm.
I used to go to that a lot. After that, I got into, there was a gift I got at the time is David Hasselhoff. It's Cool Water, I believe was the name,
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
right?
Dusseldorf. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, that was a great fragrance as well. And then I moved from that to Bleu de Chanel, and I stuck with that for a while as well. But that would have been from the years, I want to say probably 2000 to probably 2009, 2010. And then now, I actually rock with not an independent brand, but they're one of those brands out of Portugal. They're like one of the highest selling brands right now. They only do perfume. They don't do eau de toilette. They don't do eau de cologne. They only do perfume. There's a brand called Federico Mohora. They
Okay.
have a luxury fragrance called Utique. Buddy, all I can tell you, when you wear it, you're going to become dangerous. All right. Us as married men,
I was about to say the wife lets you out the house wearing it.
dude, we would go somewhere and people would comment and she just looks and she's like, okay, sir, I talk to you. Okay.
Like you
But
were warned before we left. What happened?
like, wear that at home. Why are you wearing it out? Dude. And it's interesting though that there are a few people that know it. So when they actually come across you, send it like, you're wearing Federico Mohoras or so. And I'm like, yeah, like, damn, people know these sets that well. It's a dude, like I said, you become dangerous when you put on that Utique fragrance. They have a line, but they color coded it. So it's like ruby, black, amber, and there's another one is a blue shade, but I can't remember the name of that one right now. and they all smell great, bro. They all smell great. I know people run down the Sauvage and all these other designer brands, but that Federico Mohora Utique brand, that line, it is dangerous. The only fragrance I want to get my hand on right now is the Givenchy Gentleman.
Okay.
I know there's two models. There's the older one, and then there's the modern mix that they have now. But I want to get the older one first because I think that one is the better one. And we'll see how it wears. I haven't got my hand on that yet.
Understood. Yeah, I haven't experienced those yet. It's interesting. I'm getting I still have samples like from Scent Explorer from 2 years ago. I'm still running through, and then I've gotten
Wow.
a couple of samples because it. And I don't know if you do this as well. There are like certain fragrances you just always grab, so you got to stop yourself from wearing them all the time. Like anything's a horror if I have to stop from wearing it. Maison de Darius, the two that I have from him, especially with the spring, I like wearing those. Then really all of my black owned brands, I just I want to pull them out and wear them because I like them.
Well,
But some
yeah.
of them are like 25 ml, so I really got to be cautious. But most of them
Cautious.
are potent anyway, so I don't have to
Right.
spray a lot as it is. Um, so yeah, there are a few, and I'm looking at all of these bottles over here to my right. And I was like there are some that I have to not make myself touch, but I'm like, oh, let me wear this one because I haven't worn this in a while. So I totally uh get that, like moving through those signatures. Because really, for me, it just comes down to, it'll always come down to Zahav signature pour home, and then it'll come down to Oxford Blue from English Laundry, and that's I would say is very similar to Versace Eros. It has
Right.
I would say it's a bit more sophisticated. It's like one or two extra notes in there, and from actually getting Versace Eros afterwards, I would say Oxford Blue has a bit more spice to it and lasts a bit longer, at least on my skin. So I always am going back to those because for me, those work in any weather. So if I just need
Right.
to, whatever. But I recently got a sample of Black Orchid from Tom Ford, and I'm like,
Ooh,
I might. It look. I've only worn it once. I wore it once, and I thought I might have to save it for a bottle. This is some good stuff. This
it's
is,
good.
I don't remember smelling that one on this like in the sample in Ulta. I smelled some of
Right.
the other ones like, oh, these are nice, these are nice. But this one, I'm like, it was not what I was expecting whatsoever.
Yeah,
It
I
was,
actually sampled that one here and in the mall here, and I was like, damn.
yeah. I was like, it's sophisticated, it's heavy, and it's light at the same time. It's like it's not overpowering, but the
Mhm.
fragrance is just it has a great sillage. It's not a like you think of a floral, you think of all flower. Like, no, it's a really nice, dark floral. I was like, man, this is not. I see like when you smell fragrances like that, that are always hyped and people talk about, you're like, much like I understand Savage. I understand why people like Savage. I understand why it is so mainstream and so well loved because it smells great, it lasts long, and it gets attention. I
Yes,
get it.
yes.
However, when you see something's overhyped or so hyped, you're like, oh, it can't be that good. It can't be that good. No, Black Orchid is that good.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to hold on to this sample for a minute because I would really just want to spray it. Maybe not every day, but quite often because it's a really nice fragrance.
Yeah, I've been trying to get into some of the new Arabian fragrances I've been seeing coming around as well. But if you think of fragrance just is the same way you would have thought of your dress code, even probably the music you listen to, the time period, your age group, the things you were into, then your fragrance tend to match. Because you see, man, like the JPG back then, that was like, all right, I'm out every Friday, every
Right.
weekend, I'm hitting the clubs. It's either that or you had a bottle of Paco Rabanne in those days, and it matured over time, So you find that just like I said, music, you can see the vinyl behind me still, right?
Right.
Music, your attire, it grows with you, and your fragrance, I think, does the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't been in for that long because I could tell people like I could have cared less what I wore in high school and college. Like I really didn't even wear fragrances back then. Like I could tell you, like I had
Yes.
a curve, and then my mom sold Mary Kay one point in time, so I had like some Mary Kay cologne.
Uh,
Like I could care less, but now I definitely understand that because even like my moods, but not just that, like what I really like. Like I like my signatures, but I say in the past couple months, I've really been getting into oud and really liking
Ooh,
oud heavy
yeah.
fragrances and that woodiness and that, like I picked up oud intense talk about, it's from Latafa off of
All
Amazon a
right.
couple months or so ago, and that was just um so nice, so wonderful. And so yeah, it definitely understand like the changing as you grow, as you get a bit more refined, sophisticated,
Correct.
as you grow, like your taste change. So I think that's one
Yeah.
thing that, especially when we talk about fragrances, I think that's missed out sometimes, especially once people say, "Oh, I gotta get a new thing. I gotta get this." Good. Like, no, like your taste change. Like what you like now, you may not like 2 3 years from now, just because you changed, you matured. Maybe you stepped up your game and you dressed a little bit. You want something maybe complements that a bit more. You're moving in different circles. So you know, no disrespect to Jope and none of those, because those are nice fragrances. Like, the Jope may not, really work in this office setting here. So I
Correct.
I love that aspect of our fragrances, is being able to move and transition with you throughout whatever you do.
And we're close in age, so I know back then we were grabbing the brutes, we were
Yes.
grabbing the old spices, we would grab the old English fragrances, And I remember in school, what was popular here was the Cubans, the
Uh
Cuba. Those were popular. Guys had that coming out of their pockets every day. They were selling. I mean, they still sell now,
it
And
ain't
then
cheap.
yeah, right. Perry Ellis was another one that was selling everywhere down here at a time, And I'm like, why are people running down these fragrances? Everybody smelling the same. No, I'm good. I'm good. It's all
Exactly.
right. I'm not. No, I will go for something else, and that for me was the JPG back then. But no, mm, it had to be a little different. You must hit. Man, I can tell you, I have been to events, not with my wife, with my the ex from before, and we were sitting down in a VIP section, and an old co-worker saw me. She came, she hugged me, and she's like, "Oh my God, you always smell so good." And then she turned and saw my girl. She's like, "Oh hi, how are you good?" And I'm like, and I always so it's always interesting to me. People don't understand the power of fragrances and what it can do. And I always say, after your confidence, the second thing a woman loves to smell on a man is his fragrance. Number one is
Yes.
confidence. Number two is a good fragrance.
Yes. Yes. So gentlemen out there, a good fragrance. You don't have to, have a whole bunch of bottles, just, good one
Mm-mm.
or two, one that really, this is what I say about fragrances. And this is, sometimes I'm a mood fragrance guy,
Yeah,
but I always want to wear a fragrance that makes me feel like I'm projecting the confidence that I think I am.
correct.
It makes me feel good first and foremost, and usually that translates into everybody else's reactions. Now, some, as you know, have better reactions than others,
Yeah,
but really, you wear it for yourself and how you feel, and that like sort of aura of yourself that you want to project. And
hmm,
that's one of the things with me with fragrances. I just love that aspect of it.
yep. And it becomes such a signature that when you're not in the room, that's what people will talk about. They'll be like, "Yo, this dude always smells good. He's always wearing
Yes,
this. Do you know what he
yes,
wears? Is it Sauvage? Is it what?" That becomes the like, hey, when we invite him, we know he's going to be smelling good. We know he might be wearing a bow tie. We know he might be wearing a suit.
right,
So act accordingly because he's coming.
right, right. And
Yeah.
look, yeah, I've definitely encountered that through much of my professional career.
You see? You see? Dude,
That
and
they
I
know
get
the
it all the time.
conversation. Yeah,
It's crazy. It's crazy. But that's what we do. That's what we do.
exactly. So I want to talk about some other aspects. Well, I know you do a lot with what's the digital passport Dream Flights International, as far as your luxury concierge. And you also do
Right.
real estate as well. Talk to me about those. How'd you get into those?
All right. So when I started Modern Connoisseur back then, that was in 2013, that was focused around doing personal branding for men. Because it's unheard of here. Like everybody's like, wait a minute, a man does that? Because they're so used to women doing image management. So there
Mhm.
weren't men doing anything. But because I wanted to project a certain quality, I always portrayed an aesthetic for aspiration, as I like to call it. Always refined, always proper, always gentlemanly. And the people that got attracted to those things started following me online. And then gradually, not gradually, literally one day, a Saturday, I was having lunch. I got a phone call from a gentleman in Las Vegas. All right. And he was like, Chris, I love what you do. I'm seeing where you're going, and I want you to call this number, tell them I sent you, and to give you a contract. I'm like, okay, no. Lo and behold, that was where I first started chartering jets. Never chartered a jet before in my life. Had no idea who would want to charter a jet for me, right? Because all I'm doing is putting men in suits back in those days.
Right.
I took up the challenge. I said, no problem, said yes, and figured it out along the way. That was all. And then the people that flew jets would be like, hey, well, I'm in Miami. Is it possible for you to hook me up with a car? I didn't say no. I had nobody with cars. I went online, made some calls, got to connect with a car. Then the guy with the car would say, well, if you have people here coming here from in Miami, are they going to rent a yacht for the weekend? I don't know. You have yachts? I do. Okay. So I added yachts to the roster, and it kept building like that. I never planned on starting a concierge. I basically wanted to help men live better, dress better, feel better. And the aesthetics I showed pushed me in that direction. So when I got into luxury now, and then I started connecting with all these high net worth individuals, literally from the US to the UK, parts of Europe, like sort of France, some guys in Italy, it became where they are moving, they are doing these things, and they'll be like, okay, I'm coming down to St. Bart's, I'm coming down to St. Vincent, I'm looking for a place for a client in the Caribbean, I'm looking for somebody moving to Canada. Do you have any connection to real estate? I would just say yes. I wouldn't say no. I would just take up the challenge and just pick up the phone, make the calls, make the connection, connect client A with seller B, and that's it. I just became the person in the room that could connect the dots for people. And my network literally grew that way, where if anybody was looking for anything from within the luxury industry and not just the jet, yachts, and cars, was if somebody looking for a jeweler, if they're trying to purchase diamonds, if they're trying to bring in gold. Now, I stopped doing those things because I found they got a little too dangerous. If people were looking to purchase art, and you would be surprised, art is also a very dangerous world as well, right? Been threatened many times. I can tell you, because the provenance and the history of who own pieces of art and stuff tends to get lost sometimes, and people claim a lot of things.
Understood.
And there are people with money, right? The people with money that could call other people who like to get
Hmm.
paid, right? Don't have to say it. So, so
Understood.
it's a interesting world. I tell people it's glamorous, but it's not easy. And then when I started niching down on it, I connected with Dreamflights International. And I first came on just as a strategic alliance partner. I guess used to be, chartering my jets through them.
Hmm.
And then because of what I helped them build and develop, they said, you know what, we need you on for more than what you do. And that's why I actually got a position as VP of Business Development with them. And then eventually I made partner with them. So I went from chartering jets through them to being actual part of the company. All
Okay.
right. Yeah. So that's where I sit with them. And what we've created recently, especially when the pandemic hit, that you can imagine nobody's flying, everything is grounded.
Right.
The hit on the industry was ridiculous, more than the news or anybody on the outside will ever know. And we had to find a way to not only keep income or generate revenue, but also protect our clients. So we moved from what we would call an on-demand service. We can just call to charter a jet to memberships, because we found that a lot of owners of the jets were now canceling last minute or deciding, well, look, I don't feel like renting out my jet anymore. And
Right.
then we're left scrambling to kind of help the client get their transportation, get their travel. So we said, look, we need to move to a membership base. And we also wanted to create something now coming out of the pandemic, because everybody wanted to travel more. And what the pandemic did was showed everybody how short life is. It showed us, everybody thought about the mortality after that, and the fact that life is to be lived. So we
Right.
wanted to create experiences for our clients, and that is where the digital passport came into being. Because with that, you don't just get membership, you get access to all the private jet events that we host. Also, you get access to all of the events and experiences that we're associated with. So if you want to go to the Grand Prix in Monaco, the Grand Prix in Dubai, you want to go to have a special event down in Art Basel, you want to go to the yacht show in Monaco, you want to go to the film festival in Cannes, you automatically get tickets to all these events through us as a member, the holder of the digital passport. And then from that as well, what we said, you know what, because these people are going to be attending these events under our name, we want to make sure they dress well as well. So we also have our own Dream Flights International apparel. We are working with an Italian designer called Valenti. He's actually there in Houston. And he makes all our suits, all the clothes, men or women. You go, you get your fit tailored, and you go in style to any of the events. So we wanted to make sure we encapsulate that. And I can say that there's nobody else in the aviation industry offering that level of service and value that we give compared. There's nobody else that does it. So we are very, very happy the fact that we are able to now come out of the pandemic, protect our members, and provide them additional value.
I will say that's a great pivot, especially in the adversity of the pandemic and the adversity of shutting down, and really to come out on the other end to have a business model that, one, wasn't just beneficial for the company and the employees, but also ended up being one that tends to be more beneficial for your clientele as well. That's really smart thinking. And I know it wasn't easy to pivot in that way,
Oh no.
especially from traditional models that essentially have worked for decades, I would say, in that regard. And I'm pretty sure it took a lot of arm twisting, but realistically, the pandemic, and this is one thing I've seen across many sectors, while it had devastating effects economically, and we're still feeling those effects, a lot of businesses came out on the other end with a different perspective of how to serve. Let me phrase it: those that were client focused, because
Mm-hmm.
I think real is the difference. Some business we know are very much profit focused, so they forget about the clientele that actually
Yeah.
patronizes them. um Others are very client focused and are looking more so of how to best serve our clients, but also how to make a profit as well. And in my opinion, I think a lot of those more client focused businesses really were able to find ways, not just internally, but also work with their clientele to figure out, okay, how can we make this beneficial for everybody going forward? So you still have your service, but we also still have our business. And I think that was difficult for many, but it has definitely been something to see how many industries have, many business, not industry, but businesses have really become better because of that, and really that offering those services to their clientele as well.
Yeah, it has been. And I mean, the challenge has been so extreme. The only thing that was flying during the pandemic was cargo jets, cargo planes for medical supplies. So most of the commercial planes were gutted and they were outfitted to actually transport medical supplies, stuff for firehouses and these type of things. And I'll give you an example. There was a client that wanted to get a shipment out on a Friday. So they had to actually pay the deposit and book by that Friday. They missed the deadline. By Monday, the cost increased by $70,000. 70 grand over a weekend. That was to tell you the kind of demand that was out there for cargo planes. They could not sit on it. So more demand, the prices started going up. And even coming out of the pandemic, when places started opening back up, borders were opening and people started flying private again, you would find the same thing that happened. I mentioned where owners would say, you know what, I just don't feel like leasing my jet again today. So imagine us with a client. Imagine you're a client. You want to fly this weekend. Your family, everybody's ready. You booked. Your money's already there. and then I come and tell you, hey, the owner don't want to to lease the jet anymore. I have to find you another jet, and the jet available for you is bigger, and it's going to cost me $30,000 more. The predicament I, as the business, have to come back. The embarrassing situation there's coming back to you and saying, I need an additional $30,000. That's a very easy way for you to say no.
Right.
Give me back my money. But because we're membership based now, you actually have your prepaid flight hours already paid for. So even if there's those sort of changes, we can just adjust the hours to suit to match the jet that you need, and you proceed as usual on your flight. There is no need for me to come back to you and come with the embarrassing situation that I have to find your new jet and it's going to cost you more.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be the Wednesday or Thursday before you fly to Friday. So it puts us in a very embarrassing situation. So that's why I said we had to be very creative and we had to decide, look, we are not going to do a lot of the traditional things that other aviation companies are doing anymore and switch our model from being on demand to membership.
Got you. I think that's, we've seen a lot of just companies and services in general switch to membership sort of, or even in this case, subscription based
Subscription.
models. Yeah. And it seems, you know, depending on the service, I put it that way, because I'm sure we were like, man, I used to be able to just buy this once a year, and now I'm paying monthly or paying once a year.
Yep.
There are pros and cons to it as well. So, but Chris, I'm not going to hold you too much longer, but let everybody
Sounds
know where
good.
they can find you.
All right. Well, they can find me on social media. I'm the same Mr. Crossley, sir, across the board, whether it's Facebook, whether it's IG or Twitter. You could also find me a new initiative I'm working on called the House of Dukes, which will be house.of.dukes. You can find me at that right now on Instagram as well. I'm building out that page at present.
Thank you, Chris. Look, we can talk for a while, so I'm like, let me just stop
Yeah.
this right there. But I appreciate it,
Most
man.
definitely, man. It's all good.
Greatly. Thank you very much, and take care.
I appreciate it. Enjoy this evening.
Same here.